Madeleine Randall brings a quarter-century of direct experience as a physician, a scientist, cross-cultural practitioner, administrator, and writer to her many endeavors. She completed internal medicine residency and gastroenterology fellowship at UCLA hospitals and clinics. As Associate Professor of Medicine at UCLA, she also served as the Director of the Medical Procedures Unit for the West Los Angeles Veterans Administration Hospital while becoming proficient in numerous Western and Eastern healing modalities. She served as the Integrative and Holistic Medicine Co-Director of the Malibu Health and Rehabilitation Center, followed by Director of Integrative Health for Miraval Life in Balance in Tucson, Arizona. During her tenure, Miraval was named the #1 health destination spa in the world. Subsequently, she was the Executive Director of Guest Services at Rancho La Puerta Healing Spa in Mexico. Now she brings together the entirety of her experience to Golden Branch Wellness Center in Woodland Hills and Angel City Body Kinetics in Marina del Rey. In these centers, she offers highly personalized work with clients, workshops, and seminars. Dr. Randall specializes in integrative mind, body, internal, and wellness medicine. Greetings and welcome to The Edge in Malibu. We've got a very, very special show today. We're going to meet a very remarkable woman, a physician, Dr. Gayle Madeleine Randall. She's going to tell us her exciting adventure in the world of medicine. Hello, Dr. Madeleine. You prefer to be called Madeleine rather than Dr. Gayle Madeleine Randall. Dr. Randall, how are you today?
I'm wonderful. Thank you, Jena. How are you?
That's great. You're always wonderful. You practice what you call integrated medicine. What is that?
Oh, that's a very interesting story, actually. You know, when we first started doing this kind of holistic medicine, which is really looking at the whole person, we called it alternative medicine. And that was anything other than Western medicine. Of course, Western medicine to me is my traditional medicine, but if I was a Chinese practitioner and solely a Chinese practitioner of the ancient kind, that would be my traditional medicine, wouldn't it? But we used to call anything outside of Western medicine alternative medicine. And of course, this was about 2 decades ago, and there's been a evolution in our terminology because we didn't like alternative because it implied that it was either one way or the other. And those of us that practice this holistic approach realize it's not just one way or the other, but it's all ways that really where the power comes from. So then it sort of went into complementary medicine. We started calling, instead of alternative, we called it complementary medicine. Then we didn't end up liking that either because that sounded like was something on the side, you know, like a condiment, or maybe it's free, I don't know, but complementary. So the new term is integrative medicine. And it has a very special meaning because not only does it mean the best of all worlds in approaching patients and working with them, but it means that the patient works with the doctor as a partnership. So instead of the patient coming to doctor and doctor being parent or God, you know, the doctor is now the partner to the patient in helping them through their transformation or getting from one place towards wellness.
So complementary medicine is now integrated medicine?
Yes, actually complementary alternative medicine is still a term, but integrative medicine is a Western practitioner that practices evidence-based, researched complementary alternative medicine techniques within their practice as well as Western medicine.
You were one of the first doctors to teach integrative medicine to medical students. How was that received?
It wasn't just me, of course. There was a whole committee of us, and we submitted the course to the dean. It got approved. And to tell you the truth, when we first started it, though, because we had doctors of Oriental medicine, we had Native American practitioners, we had chiropractors, we had all kinds of stuff in our academic center that we never had before. So when we first had it, and we were doing these classes, and some of the outsiders were coming in, the dean even showed up one day, I was a little nervous about whether or not I was going to be taken out of there, and reprimanded or something, but not at all. As a matter of fact, it was amazing to me how many people came and how many people showed up, in addition to the students, that showed me more people were beginning to get this interest and coming out of the closet, so to speak. So it was very well received.
Coming out of the closet in the world of medicine?
Yes, indeed.
You did a medical clerkship on a Native American reservation. Why did you do that?
Well, I'm originally from Nebraska, and I went to medical school in Nebraska because I put myself through school, and it was just a little bit more economically feasible for me to stay in Nebraska and complete that, although it turned out to be a very good school. But before I actually started my internship, I didn't even have my MD yet. It was the year before we got our MD. We were to go to either outstate Nebraska and spend it with Little Country Doctor, or to go to the Indian Reservation for this sort of experience outside of our institution. And I chose the Indian Reservation because it was something I'd never experienced before. And actually, Jena, it turned out to be the very experience that changed my life. By interacting with the natives through a very interesting experience, which I'll tell you, I gained my holistic perspective. I began to see the person not just as their problem, but as their body, their mind, their spirit, and their emotions, because that's what I was eventually taught after being there. But when I first got there, it was very interesting because culturally it's much different. You know how when we want to be friendly, we look each other in the eyes? Well, it's a little different on some of these reservations. When I first went there, they didn't look me in the eyes. As a matter of fact, they would look down. And I thought, well, maybe they didn't like me. And actually, as it turned out, they were being respectful. I found out later that was a sign of respect. Once they become more familiar with you, then they're allowed to look you in the eyes. It's a different thing. But one day, I went into the clinic, and I went in early to open up the clinic, and I went to the front door to open the door, as I did every day, and there was just one woman standing there. And as a matter of fact, there oftentimes was a long line, but this lady was leaned up against the door, propped up against the door. And as I opened the door, she literally fell into my arms. And holding her, I could smell fire. And I looked at her, and she was very badly burned. And she was making a wheezing sound. She was breathing like this. And long story short, her propane tank had exploded the night before. Lord knows how long she had been propped up against that door. We brought her in. I put her on the table, did everything we could do from a Western standpoint in terms of taking an x-ray. We saw some bad edema or swelling in her lungs. We gave her drugs to treat that. We put her on oxygen, gave her an IV, called the ambulance, obviously, right away. And she was still having difficulty. So I asked the nurse, would she please go get her family, go get all of her friends and family, and come over. And we kneeled down around her gurney, right there in the clinic, and prayed together. And after having done that, I was called that night to the medicine man's house. And I was very frightened at first because I thought, oh my goodness, I've done something wrong, taboo against Native American law or something. And it turned out just the opposite. When I got to his house, he was standing on the porch with his mate. And when I walked up the stairs, they had these big smiles on, and they hugged me. And they called me granddaughter. They said, welcome, granddaughter, come in and eat with us. So I went in and ate, and I was supposed to go back the next night at the same time, at sundown. And I did that for about a week before they told me that they were going to teach me some of their ways.
Tell us about your project at UCLA that combined non-traditional medicine and traditional medicine. How was that taken?
It was an unusual combination. This was an idea of a man that I worked with at the time in the Digestive Disease Center. His name was Dr. Emran Meyer. And also another colleague of ours, George Amiot, who was a Native American practitioner. And we found, just within the Digestive Disease Center in gastroenterology, which I was, that many of our patients had reached a dead end. In other words, we were offering everything that we could from a Western standpoint, and we had no more to really offer them to make them better. So we thought we would take these patients and offer them another discipline. And the other disciplines that we offered were either Native American medicine, Vedic medicine, or Eastern medicine. So all the dead-end patients, so forth, were offered these other disciplines. And we found that in this small pilot study that we did, in more than 90% of patients had an improved outcome. More than 90% had an improved outcome with this other discipline being offered, which is pretty powerful stuff.
So how many different disciplines are you schooled in?
I apprenticed for many years, and still do, for that matter, with Native American practitioners. I still am apprenticed to a man named Joseph Real, who is near and dear to my heart. And he's both Southern Ute and Pickery Pueblo Indian. And I've had other Native American teachers as well. I also have studied Oriental medicine and am a Japanese acupuncturist. I have also studied many things about herbs, both from this country and Chinese herbs, but I like the Native American herbs, the herbs that grow in our own country. I like working with those. I've studied a lot about supplements and nutrition, and of course that's one of the major things that I work with my patients is what are they eating, you know, what are they missing in what they're eating, and how can we help with that. Also, women's medicine. I was partner with a woman who worked with Dr. John Lee, who wrote the books on menopause, which you may be familiar with.
Yeah.
And I had a teacher, the man that we met making that project on Vedic medicine, who I'm still in touch with, Dr. Purdanan Awasthi, who has taught me a great deal about Vedic. But that is some of these disciplines are lifetime studies. And what I like to do is just keep learning as much as I can. I figure the more that I can learn, the more I can offer my patients.
A lot of our viewers don't know what Vedic is. Is that Eastern Indian?
Eastern Indian, and a simplistic way to describe it would be they practice according to what your body type is, what your dosha or body type is. And depending on that, you know, you might have heat or you might have coldness, and you know, whatever your body type dictates what your diet should be, what your, you know, nutrition, what your supplements might be, and this kind of thing, and how you might go out of balance from your body type.
Dr. Madeleine, you were also associate professor at UCLA. Then you decided to leave. What did your colleagues think about that?
I wondered what they thought too, you know, but everything I ever received from the institution, you know, any interactions that I still have, which I still have, as a matter of fact, I'm teaching there again, which is very interesting. We're always positive, but I'm sure they wondered why in the world would she leave her vested position as an associate professor and go and practice, you know, holistic medicine, alternative medicine, or whatever. But it was my path, I really feel, my guiding light to do that. And in order to do it at that time, because we're talking about a time before, right now, I'm happy to say, I'm thrilled to say, that I go back to these institutions and teach these subjects that I had to leave to learn. But now they have their own departments in integrative medicine. Now they have courses for medical students, which in almost every medical school. But 10, 20 years ago, those didn't exist. So sometimes you have to leave so you can come back.
How do you decide what area of medicine to use on each patient?
That's a good question. And a lot of patients wonder that too. Gee, you have all the, what type of medicine are you going to use on me, you know? Yeah. But it's not, you know, the person doesn't come in and go, oh, you need entirely Chinese medicine, or you need entirely this. To me, the patient comes in, they will tell their story. And what's different about coming in and seeing me perhaps than some traditional doctors, I would say maybe a lot, but although traditional doctors are catching up, and I love this, I also love that, but is that I will sit with a patient for no less than an hour. I mean, they're no less than an hour when you come and see me. And I will listen to everything you have to say. And one thing that I learned very early on is every patient comes with their own answer. And all I have to do is listen. We're all imbued with a certain wisdom, and we acquire knowledge. And through that acquisition of knowledge, by listening to the patient, what is actually out of balance becomes apparent. Then we choose perhaps something from Eastern medicine, perhaps something from an herb from Native American medicine, perhaps, you know, a diet plan, an exercise plan, and investigate what the spiritual practice might be. Maybe they have one. Maybe they need a meditation to do. And we put this all together into that patient's plan. Together, we make this plan. We design this plan together, and they become the artists of their own transformation.
You got into the spa industry for a while, first in Arizona and then in Mexico at Rancho La Puerta. Now, how does this relate to your path?
You know, it's interesting. You know, prior to the last decade, I would say, medicine was pretty regimented within the academic institution. And in order for there to be growth in this idea of wholeness, in this idea of wellness, in this movement, if you will, in medicine, it had to be done somewhere. So many of us thought, including Andrew Weil. As a matter of fact, Andrew Weil and I taught seminars to women cancer survivors at Miraval, Life and Balance in Arizona. And that was very successful. But we took medicine out of the academic institution into the spas, which were welcoming of this type of education, which were welcoming of this type of wholeness, if you will. And we grew it there for a while, almost like you'd take a plant and put it in a greenhouse for a while and then put it back into the ground. So we grew our medicine in the spas for a while, and I wrote programming for them, and I taught there. And many people came and learned and became healed there. The spas became healing places.
I understand that you recently were a keynote speaker at MD Anderson Cancer Center in Texas. That is quite prestigious.
I was humbled by that because it was the first, I mean, MD Anderson is a huge academic center, but to be the keynote speaker at this prestigious conference on cancer, and what I was to speak on, which is what I speak on often around the country, is mind-body medicine. And then I was also asked to give grand rounds on a topic different than mind-body medicine. So I gave grand rounds on an introduction to Native American medicine. And I'm pushing the edge again with that. But you know what, Jena? I was surprised. At the end of this conference, there, of course, I don't know if you know what grand rounds is, but grand rounds is when all the doctors of all the institution, the whole MD Anderson institution, are required to come to this conference. So there's maybe 500 doctors in their long white coats, all the way from, you know, your medical students, your interns, your residents, your fellows, and then the doctors with all the fruit salad that have been around since, you know, the first stones in the foundation were laid. And those guys sit in the front, and it goes back, you know, with the medical students in the back. And towards the end of my speak, one of the neurosurgery professors stood up and he asked me, this was done by Dr. Louis Belmadrona, who is an academic researcher and also a Native American himself. He wrote Coyote Medicine. And he showed 80% improved outcome at 5 years when you add Native American medicine to Western medicine. This was with chronic disease patients. So, I mean, I presented that data and plus my own from UCLA. So it was very moving. And then he asked me at the very end, Dr. Randall, what about Native American medicine for a broken arm? And I said, oh, doctor, I said, all these patients had Western medicine. He goes, yeah, I know. But what about Native American medicine for a broken arm? And I said, well, doctor, I said, the way my teachers taught me, they said, your medicine, your Western medicine, is better for curing. But our medicine is better for healing because it addresses the body, the mind, and the spirit. And you know, a lot of people in that room stood up and clapped. And wow. I was inspired by that. Not so much, it wasn't about me, it was about that they were ready to hear it. Yeah. Now, if people at an institution like that are ready to hear it, I think we're ready to go public. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we are on the edge in Malibu.
That's true.
You appeared on NBC's The Other Side. Now that's a show about paranormal experiences.
You know, that is true. I was invited on that show, not once, more than once, to talk, because I was a professor at UCLA that was willing to talk about something as out there. This shows you how far we've come as alternative medicine. That's how weird it was 10 years ago, Jena. That's how weird it was. I mean, I appeared between people that were struck by lightning and I think maybe people that saw ghosts or something, you know, and here we were talking about alternative medicine, but you know, the public response was so resounding to that piece that we did it again. I think we did it, I think it was 2 or 3 times that we did it. It was very, very educational for the public. It tells you that the people are usually with something before you can change the institution.
Dr. Madeleine, why did you choose to move to Malibu?
Jena, when I left UCLA, I came to Malibu and I practiced here for 6 years. That was before me going to Arizona, then Mexico, and now I've come back. I feel like, I mean, I know I've come home. I've come home. I went and I gathered more and more tools, and now I'm back doing what I'm really best at, and that's working with people, teaching and working with people one-on-one.
Do you occasionally go back to Arizona?
I do go back and I teach, and I have clients still from there, but this is my home. This is my home, and I have practices now both in Woodland Hills, which is just over the hill from Canaan, and also in Marina del Rey. So depending on which side you live on Malibu, it's an easy shot for people.
Besides being active here in Malibu with Chumash Day and being on the emergency medical team, do you give seminars?
You know, now that I'm an official resident of Malibu again, I'm thrilled about that, but I'm part of the emergency medical team. I also am very active in a lot of community activities like Chumash Day. And I give lectures here in Malibu and all around. I'm very active in teaching at UCLA. Also Kaiser, I've done some at Northridge and also around the rest of the country.
It is clear that wellness is the way, but what does that do for the patient who is not well?
You know, I think that's an important thing to consider for all of us, really, but especially for patients to understand that there's a difference between getting healed and getting cured. You know, in my own experience, at least one I can talk about because it's my brother, he had a terminal cancer when he was 32 years old. And I went to his side. He had the type of cancer that doubles in size every 24 to 72 hours. It was a B-cell leukemia. And so he chose not to do anything Western because anything would just cause more detriment than help for him. So where did that leave him in terms of his wellness path? Well, what we did is we went home and we addressed everything about the spirit and everything about his emotions. And he actually healed, physically even, but he eventually died. So there's a difference between healing and curing. He healed, he took care of business, he saw people that he needed to see that he hadn't seen before he crossed over, and he healed. He took his friends out to dinner one night, and this is a man where when I first found him, when I went back to Nebraska to help him, was in kidney failure. That went away. So there's a difference between healing and curing, and I think that all people, no matter where they are in the wellness continuum, need to realize that they can still have quality. It's about improving your quality for however much quantity you get.
Dr. Randall, you always seem to have been at the edge, on the crest of that surfing wave. Where do you see it going from here in medicine?
Well, I think we're doing pretty well with the individual. It seems also like Western practitioners are beginning to pick up the ball. A lot of people are interested in this. Now what we really need to heal is our system, our medical system. And I think that will be born from the change in the people that run it. But it's going to be a whole new way of looking at things. I think things, instead of being run like in a pyramid basis, will be run in a consensus basis. There'll be more input from the actual people that are participating, being served by the health plan. And I see it being sustainable, so that the people within the system will not only be working within the system, but have access to the same tools so they can be healed by the system. You know, in the old days, for instance, ICU nurses, well-known fact, burn out. Well, if they're being fed by the system at the same time that they're putting in, maybe there's a spa, or maybe they can get a massage, or maybe there's Oriental medicine, classes for meditation, classes for mind-body, right within the system. That's what's next.
That is perfect. You are an extraordinary doctor, and we're pleased to have you here with us.
Thank you.
You have been watching The Edge in Malibu, and we have been interviewing Dr. Gayle Madeleine Randall. The Edge in Malibu. Thank you for being with us, and I'm Jena Chanel saying adios.